Hey my friends, welcome back to Mark Kelly Farm. Kelly's birthday is on the horizon here and trying to figure out what to do for her birthday, and she gave me a suggestion. It's a project that we've been wanting to get done for the past 5 years here in the house. So I told her for her birthday that I'll get her done. So we'll show you what it is. Stick around, it's going to be fun. So we have a whole tub of our cast iron cooking pans out in the garage that has yet to be unpacked since our move over 5 years ago. So we want to get that out and get that in the house. Problem is our kitchen is so small we don't have a lot of storage space. So we've needed to come up with a way to store our cast iron. And Kelly has an idea, or had an idea, that we're going to do. So we have this wall here between the dining room and the kitchen, and she wants to make a cast iron storage wall here. And I'll show you a picture of what that's going to look like. So to get this project going, we got to move some stuff. I need to move this picture that my kids made me when we moved. We'll find a real good spot for that. And I need to move our thermometer here. This is the outdoor thermometer. It's got a wire that goes outside. We'll probably just move it over here to the window frame so we can still see that. We don't use it a lot now since we have the weather station, but I still glance at it every now and then. Okay, we got our picture up there moved. It's a great spot for it, right in the entryway to the living room. And then we'll worry about mounting that thermometer later. Okay, we have our stud sensor here. It's been giving me a problem. Every time I touch it, the darn thing goes off. Pretty crazy. But we got it to work enough to where we're able to find a stud here. And then there's a stud over here right along this wall. But there's no studs over here until you get into the window frame. So there's nothing over here to attach to. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a backer board out of 3/4 plywood to affix to the wall that all of our other boards will connect to. So it'll give us a good strong base, because we don't want to put little thin boards up there and have them loose on one side. That'll cause us a problem later. So we need 28 inches wide by 76 inches tall. And then I think we're going to bring our little end cutting saw in here and trim this little nub off of here. It'll allow us enough room here. Kelly wants it as wide as we can get it, so that's what we'll do. All right, got our plywood out of the truck. You can see our plywood takes kind of a turn up here on the right side. So we'll cut the piece we need off of that left side. So we're going to get the skill saw out and get this thing cut. And yes, a table saw would be much more accurate, but I cannot maneuver this big monster on the table saw myself. And plus our rip fence doesn't go out to 25 inches. So skill saw it is. So making a perfectly straight line with a skill saw is kind of difficult freehand. So what I'm doing, I'm following the line on the plywood with the left-hand side of the plate on the bottom of the skill saw, which makes my cut 1 inch long instead of following it with the blade. So when I get this drop piece that comes off of this plywood, I'll flip it over and use the factory edge as a straight edge to run the saw along to make my final cut. That way we get a nice straight cut. So we've got our board exactly where we need it. We've got C-clamps on either end so it cannot move. And another thing that helps us line this up is we measure 24 inches from this edge of our piece to this edge of our factory edge of the drop piece. So we know we're perfect. So we can get a table saw quality cut with a skill saw. I know it doesn't look straight, but it is. That's just because of these little bad edges. But the edge down here that we're riding on will be fine. Now, I'd love to put the widest part of the table, and some of you have probably figured that out, that it would be more stable if we were able to move this over and use the wide part of the table, which would be this edge over here against this. But unfortunately, the Ryobi saw doesn't give you enough room from here to here to miss this board. So that's an unfortunate little problem, but not an issue. So now we just mark it and cut it to length, and we got it. Now for our length, we can use our clamp-on straight edge. It's only 4 feet long, so we couldn't use it on the long edge. Plus it would probably bend a little bit anyway. But what we're going to do is make a sacrificial cut, because we don't want the edge to be so heavy when it drops off. So what I did was, on our measurement, I put the fence on this side of the measurement. We'll run our saw there, and then we'll move it over. And then when we cut that last final strip, it's going to be so small, it's not going to be wanting to drop off and tear everything up. I forgot, we need to go in with our little vibrating saw here, cut that little piece off the windowsill. If you haven't got one of these tools here, folks, get one. They will save a lot of headache in your life. Got our little nub cut off here. You can see there's no paint behind it, of course, but we'll deal with that later. I actually have a can of this paint. Okay, we got our backer board in here ready to go. I've got a little piece of 1 5/8 wood here that I'm going to screw just above the baseboard. That way when we put the backer board on here, it'll have some place to rest while we start screwing things to the wall. And that'll give us a gap that we need for our 1.5 inch trim board that's going to go around the outside. All right, we've got 2 screws in it, and it's perfectly plumb. So we're going to put a good number of screws into that stud that comes right down the middle. And because this thing was kind of concaved with a bow in it, when we put those screws into that stud, it sucked it super tight against the wall. So I don't think we're going to need any other fasteners. Initially, I bought some molly bolts, or what they call them, toggle bolts, to put through the sheetrock. But I think with the number of 3-inch screws I'm putting into that stud, it's going to be fine. Okay, that ain't going nowhere. All right, we're headed out. We need to make the trim go around our backer board. So for that trim, we picked up some 2x4s. These are called visual grade 2x4s, which means there's not a lot of issues with them. We're going to pick the 2 straightest ones, which I believe is this one and this one, to do our long pieces, and then the one that's got a little curve we'll do our short pieces out of. So what we have to do is we have to mill it, and for that we can do it on the table saw. We've got to cut a notch out of here, probably about 2 inches wide by about 3/4 deep, and then this will sit flush against the wall and will lap over the top of our backer board by 1.5 inches. We want 1.5 inches on either side, either 3.5-inch boards. So we'll go ahead and set the table saw up to make these cuts. So the first thing I need to do is get rid of this rounded corner, because where our other boards come against this, we don't want to leave this gap, because they'll be square on the corners. So we don't want this round. So we've got our table saw set at 3 3/8. These are 3.5 inch boards. So we'll cut just that rounded edge off. Okay, now we need to get set up for basically what's going to be a rabbet cut in these boards. So we know for sure that we need 1.5 inches left over. So we need to go 1.5 inches from our fence to the outside right-hand edge of this blade, and that's going to give us 1.5 inches. So then we also need to go 3/4 deep to the very tip top of this blade, and that will leave 3/4 of our 1.5 inches here once we run it through the second time. Got our setup. Best way to check it is to run a scrap board through. We had to make a minor adjustment to get our depth correct because it's hard to do because the blade's round. So we are ready to run all 3 of these boards through. Okay, we've got all the boards run through. Our next setup is we need to run the blade to where it's this high, so it cuts this piece out, because this is the orientation we're going to put it through. And then we need 3/4 of an inch from the rip fence to the left side of the blade. So it will leave exactly 3/4 here, and it'll cut out exactly 3/4 here. So we got our practice piece ran through. We're dead on in the center. So just like a 1980s Alabama album, we can roll on. There's our 2 pieces separated. Got our trim piece here. And nice little board we could use for something else. 3/4 by 2. 2 more to go. So now we got to cut our pieces to length, which means mitering the outside corners, which is a real pain when you're fitting stuff to get those corners tight. There's nothing better for mitering corners than a mitering saw. So we'll set this thing on 45 degrees and we'll start figuring out our pieces. Got our first miter cut. Now the tricky part about this trim is we have to fit it around our backer board on the wall. So we can't measure from here and we can't measure from here. We have to measure to this point right here. So I think we, 23 inches? We'll go double check that. So we'll measure and then make our other miter to where it's to this point. So we're exactly 25 wide in on the backer board. So I'm going to go just a hair long because you can always trim some off. You can't add any back on. And then we can run back and forth and just barely shave this to get it perfect. Now we need to be able to see this mark. So what we'll do is we'll turn our saw the other way so we can get the other miter. Okay, there's our first piece. Let's go check it for fit. All right, you see this little line here? That's as far as we are off. We lined up the other side and then we just marked the inside with a pencil and then transferred it. So we can shave that off real easy and then this one will be perfect. So we got our first piece mounted down here. It will be coming back off for sanding and staining. We got to sand all the letters off and clean everything up. We cut 2 little short blocks with also a miter on them to help us fit it perfectly in the center. So now we can work on our 2 long sides. We'll get the right miter cut for down here, and then we'll mark them up top, and then we'll install those, then we can do our top piece. Thought I would also check my clearance while I'm here. Got clearance there. Got clearance. Got clearance there. And got clearance there. We're good to go. Okay, sideboards are in. We got perfect fit. So now we're going to make our top one. We're going to take our time on that. All right, you can't ask for much better fit than that on the corners. Looks real good. So all these edge pieces now got to come back off. We're going to mark them as to where they go because we don't want to mix them up. And then we have to sand them and stain them and seal them. So we'll see you tomorrow. All right, next day, slight change of plans. I stopped on the way home from coffee and actually got the wood that we're using for inside the field of this. So before I take all the trim down, I'm going to measure those boards so I can cut them, and then I can stain and sand and everything all at the same time. Here's the boards we're using here. It's a tongue and groove product, and it's got a decorative groove in the middle, so it makes it look like individual boards. So our first measurement's 21 1/8. We're going to give that a shot, see how it fits, and then we can cut the rest. I was hoping to use our miter saw to cut our pieces, but our boards are 8 inches wide, which is too wide for our blade. So table saw, we're going to have to use that, which is not quite as easy, but we'll still be able to get her done. All right, for helping us to get straight cross cuts, I found a super straight piece of wood that we had in our scrap pile, and then just screwed it onto our miter gauge here for the table saw, and that's what these screw holes are for. So cut our first piece of wood, then I put the square on it. We are perfectly square cut, so that's good. So what I'm going to do, all of our pieces that we need are less than 24 inches, so I'm taking these 8-footers, I'm just cutting them all down to 24 inches. So they're a lot easier to handle here on the table saw. Okay, we got our first piece ready to cut. We've already checked this in for square. It's perfect. We made our mark at 21 1/8. And you can see we've got the left-handed tooth. You can see the teeth alternate left and right hand. We've got our left-handed tooth right on our mark. So all we got to do is back off, turn the saw on, and buzz it. Got our first piece in. We're just going to hold it in place with painter's tape for now. We're going to keep stacking, go clear to the top, figure out where we need to cut to get our last one in there, and then we can sand and stain all of this. All right, got all of our boards cut. We had to rip down a board to go up top up here. Now, if you'll notice, these boards have two different types of profiles. This is called car siding. I don't know where the name comes from. I've never heard of it. But one side of the board has the groove down the center. The other side of the board does not. So you have your choice. You can go for the wide look or the narrow look. So let me know in the comments which you prefer. I got to send a picture to Kelly and ask her because it's her birthday present. So she'll tell me which side she wants out. Okay, the verdict is in. Kelly likes the wide look better. So when we reinstall them, we just have to flip those boards down there around. So we can pull all this apart now. Lots of sanding, which I'll save you the boring watch on that, and the staining, and then we'll put this thing back together. Got our finish on here. We're using the poly shades. It's stain and polyurethane all in one. It's a one-step process. So everything looks good. Just got to dry and then go back on there. All right, next day, I came in last night and our stained border was done, so I mounted it back on there. So now, today I'm going to go out and we'll stain these, and then they'll dry. And we'll probably put these on tomorrow morning. We also have the hardware that goes on here that we have to assemble and paint, so we can do that today as well. So it's warm enough outside to go do this now. So here's our hanging hardware that we're going to put on the wall. I had to get these pipes custom made 21 inches because the hardware store only had 24 inches and they only had one of them. Most of your bigger hardware stores will cut in thread pipe for you, especially if you live in a rural area. However, our store did not, so I had to go to one of our local companies to get these made. And it looks like whatever machine they put it in kind of bunged this up, so they had to sand that smooth again. So we're going to paint all these, and then plus our pipe flanges here, they only had 6 of them that were black pipe. The other 2 are galvanized, so we're going to end up painting everything. The other thing I did was I used street L's for these instead of just a regular elbow where you'd have to have another close nipple here. I think it looks cooler that way. And plus you minimize the number of fittings you need. All of our hardware is assembled and painted. Gonna let it dry out here in the sun. Meanwhile, we've started sanding our field boards. It's got about half of them to go, and then we can get some stain on these. Got the finish on all our boards. I brought our hardware in here to dry. So we got a graduation party to go to again, so we'll see you in the morning again. Well, we got home in time from our graduation party where I could put this thing together. Everything was dry. So there's the big reveal. Kelly's happy with it. Good birthday present. And it was a fun project. Pretty cool. So there's a solution if you've got a small kitchen like we do and some cast iron that you don't have room for. Make you a wall to put it on. Hope you enjoyed this project as much as I did, and I hope you come back and see us real soon here at Mark Kelly Farm. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy. We love you guys. See ya.